Hey guys, thanks for joining me for that setup and playthrough of Peak Oil, a game released in 2017 for 2 to 5 players. Its cost right now is roughly $30 to $50. Harder to find though as it happens. So let me talk, I guess, a little bit about the components. So the components of this game are, I think I did an open boxing of this game not too long ago, and the initial impression of the components were pretty decent. But after playing the game, while I really liked the linen finish on the cards, the stock was actually very thin and flimsy. So as I went to go shuffle some of the cards, like they were very bendable, almost to the point to where it would leave creases. So that was kind of a drawback of that. Otherwise, the board itself, the master board, was pretty good, really solid. Artwork, while being plain and straightforward, still pretty decent. The oil cubes for the oil drums was pretty nice. The bag was of good quality. So other than the card stock, ultimately the components of the game were, definitely a fair value. So the theme. I think that the theme integration obviously was integrated very well. Some people who are really good with geography might notice that some of the locations were a little off on where they might otherwise fall in real life, especially with some of the shipping routes that were indicated on the game. But definitely setting that part aside for realism, because again, this is set in a somewhat fictitious scenario. The theme of the game, while being a part of the type of game it is, definitely makes sense. And the artwork really was nice, somewhat professional, yet kind of ominous about, oh no, what happens if the oil resources do end up, going empty. This game is probably for the type of players, I'd say, a medium to a more hardcore style player. It's definitely not an entry level or a casual player style game. Reason being is because the setup is pretty involved. A lot of little components happening, and the rule variations do change when you're playing with 2 or 3 players versus 4 or 5. So you got to remember to pull certain cards out, put certain things up in a certain way. On the initial setup, when you're drawing out a certain number of cards for the number of players to set up the oil fields, it's different from then the 3 oil field cards that get put out onto the table. So a lot of little nuances to the game. And then during the playing of the game, there's definitely some strategy involved for anticipating your turn and what your opponents might do. So in terms of the type of player that would be interested in this one, I put it into the more medium to heavyweight type of game. Replayability. Definitely high on the replayability though, because you're constantly shuffling in cards. When you're doing the shipping routes and other things that happen, you're flipping over the tokens. So there's ever-changing elements to the game which do add to that replayability. So I'd give the replayability of this one definitely a factor of high, because there's a lot of randomness going on and a lot of different things that can happen, especially the length of the game. Because when you're going through, you could pull out, a black oil cube almost every time, but you could also get hit with a lot of reds in a row. So I guess reasons why you might want to add this into your collection. It's a very solid, albeit maybe too complicated, especially with the rule book, area control, resource management style of game. And I say area control because you're not able to do actions unless you're the majority person with your agents in those locations. So you need to have those agents there in order to do it. And you're also kind of managing your oil resources at the same time, because you also need to balance risk and reward. Do you risk shipping lanes for potentially losing half of your oil if you pull out a red barrel? Things like that. Reasons why you may not want to add it into your collection: because you're looking for a more casual, lighter fare type of game. There are definitely easier area control style games out there. So this one is, like I said, more on the complex side of the genre. but thematically and everything, it does make sense and is a lot of fun to play. So my personal thoughts, though, while going through it, as I mentioned a moment ago, I am really happy that I backed this Kickstarter back in 2017. I'm a little mad at myself that I'm just getting it to the table, but that's going to be the case with a lot of these, as you'll come to find. The only, I guess, thing that I didn't care for while going through the game was because you're always putting the red oil barrels back into the bag, it can kind of prolong the game unnecessarily, because if there's, say, 1 black oil and 5 red ones still in that bag, or 3 depending on the number of players, that's a 25% chance or a 75% chance that the game is not going to end on that turn. And you could constantly, go through the game and just pluck out red barrels after red barrels, and that's the randomness to the game. So I feel like there should have been some mechanic as the black barrels got towards the end that could still somewhat balance and expedite the end game scenario. Small gripe, and I guess my only other gripe about the game is the fucking box. Oh man, you guys will find that I gripe about the inserts in the box and things like that in a lot of my videos, but this one, again, it's a needless use of space, and I get why they do it, because there's production costs involved with punch boards and things like that are usually of a set size. Something like this has to sit on the shelf in a certain way. I get that. But there's so much air in there. There's no inserts, so the cards are just, flying around, and I always got to kind of figure out where they go. So I like box organization, as you guys know. So those are my thoughts. If you guys have any comments, leave them down in the comment section below. If you like the content, please leave a like and subscribe. I definitely appreciate the support. And I guess until next time, guys, thanks for watching.